Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, 다들 하지 뻔한 이야기.
At present, for example, the MLP test uses a fairly high average deflection force. At present, there's no linkage of that back to the existing specifications that manufacturers build paddles to.
Carl,
so there's a little.
Can you explain? Sorry, can we pause you for a sec on
Course.
what does it mean by MLP is using a high average deflection force?
They've got they're using a test developed internally or developed by the Pickle Pro Labs that uses a higher deflection force to test the movement in the face of the paddle, how much rigidity there is in the face of the paddle, and what the potential return of energy might be. We use a lower deflection force at the certification labs at NTS to test essentially the same thing. We're just lower on the curve. If you look at the overall force and movement curve that you would use to analyze the results of the test, we're lower on the curve. It served us very well for quite some time in terms of as a surrogate for power up until recently with the advent of a couple new paddles out there that it looks like we'll need to move a little bit faster toward a coefficient of restitution type test or an exit speed ratio, all of which require very tightly controlled lab conditions. But it's something we've been researching for quite some time. And I've got an update, by the way, what we'll be doing at Nationals to advance the ball in this area.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Go ahead with that then.
Okay. So we're there's two things that we're doing, actually. We're bringing in a piece of equipment that actually has been designed to not only function for doing swing weight, which you may have seen. We brought a swing weight machine to several events this year.
Yeah, you showed me that. That was interesting because you said, like, hey, if you have a paddle that you really like, we can sort of tell you that and what the exact swing weight is, because it sort of changes based on manufacturer, sort of a little bit of an error or variance or whatever. Yep. Yeah, so that was I've seen that. That was an interesting piece of equipment.
Yeah, we've got a new platform that we're bringing to this one that not only will execute that swing weight and possibly spin weight. I have to dive back in on the specs on this one, but it also has a deflection element too. And so we're not introducing a new policy. We're sticking with the policy that we've been doing to date, but we will be able to start to create a fairly rich data set given all the paddles that will be coming in. And we'll find a corollary that we're comfortable with that advances the ball in terms of how we are measuring coefficient of restitution. Again, deflection itself isn't measuring that exit speed ratio, or it isn't a proper coefficient of restitution test, but in the field, this may serve us well going forward. So this piece of equipment will be on site. There's a couple of other things that we're doing as well. We're bringing in a couple of pro-grade radar guns from Stalker Sports. We've got two different types we're bringing in, one that measures both inbound and outbound velocity. So we'll be able to do essentially an exit speed ratio relative to those two numbers. And then the second gun that we're bringing will measure spin rates as well. And so we'll find the right placement areas around. Ideally, if we can set these up on center court, and I've got to work with the PPA team and the broadcast team for clearances on this. If it doesn't work there, then we'll do it on some side courts. The upside of this platform is that there is output in terms of speed, which will make for some great information for the talent, the on-air talent in terms of what how they're evaluating the speed of serves and serve returns and that type of thing, or an overhead, for example. So we're very excited about that. We'll bring a high-speed camera up to 960 FPS, which will run in parallel with these radar guns to help correlate the test data as well. So we'll have some optical input from it as well as the radar inputs.
So interesting. So, in a perfect world, you're in a lab and you have unlimited money. You can do an exit velocity test, and that pretty much solves for power, right? Power, I feel, or how much power a paddle has, I think you can gauge accurately by an exit velocity test.
That's the best measurement. You're absolutely correct there.
What then spin? how can you, in a perfect world, is there a way to judge spin without somebody actually swinging the paddle? Because it feels to me like, I'll defer to you on that.
Yeah, that's a very difficult measurement. What we've developed actually several years ago, beyond the surface roughness test, and you wouldn't have visibility to this, but for certification, not only does a paddle get tested for surface roughness, which is an indirect contributor to friction, we actually conduct a coefficient of friction test, which is a physics-driven test, where we drag a sled that has the same material as a ball on it across the face of the paddle, and we measure what force that takes. And this is an ASTM test, so it's a national standards based test used in other in industrial and sports applications, and it gives us a number that we're able to look at. That this number can be affected by roughness, but it can also be affected by surface coatings. And so, as you know, there's a few paddles out there that are possibly smooth to the touch, but when you drag a ball across it, it'll actually rip ball material off the ball itself. And so this coefficient of friction test is able to bound paddles with that feature, so you don't end up with some sticky paddle out there as well. And that's probably the closest thing you'll find to a specification that actually measures an attribute of where ball meets paddle. We may modify that test in the future. Right now, as I've described it, it is a dynamic coefficient of friction. It measures the material moving across the face of the paddle. There's an additional piece we may add to this, and it's a static coefficient of friction. So that moment that you contact the ball, it gets compressed into the face of your paddle. At some point, it's going to break free, and it's that force required to break free that we may also be measuring in the future.
All right, you guys know that we work with Vuori, best sponsor ever, because we constantly wear their stuff. I'm wearing my shirt right now. I've been playing in this shirt a lot, but I pretty much wear it everywhere, especially when I'm traveling. I wear those sweatpants that they have. They have a bunch of different options. I'm a big fan of the joggers, but you can go to vuori.com/thedink to get 20% off your first purchase. And enjoy free shipping on any U.S. orders over $75 and free returns. That's vuori.com/thedink. Discover the versatility of Vuori clothing.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, rather had fun.